Lucie, thank you for being here. For people who don't know who you are, will you introduce yourself, please?
For sure. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I have been a long time follower of your Minopon tarot cards, and that's how we first connected. Um, I am a podcaster. I have a podcast called The Roller Coaster. I have over 260 episodes at the moment. I've also recently launched my first guided journal. It's called Your Journaling Journey. And I'm also building an online community that is far away from all other forms of social media.
Yeah, great. And I said this before we got started that I feel like people could learn so much from someone like you, especially because you create a lot of content for your podcast. And could you talk about that for a minute? Just how did you get started in podcasting in the first place?
How did I get started in podcasting? It just looked neat.
Love it.
And that was basically it. I'm a talker. I was that kid in school that it didn't make a difference where the teacher sat me. I'd be talking to somebody and everybody about anything and everything. That's just who I was. And I always chuckle that not one single teacher ever encouraged me to do anything with my gift of gab. It just wasn't a thing back then. Um, when I started seeing podcasting, I thought, well, my first introduction to podcasting was through my husband.
Mm.
He was doing some work with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with who Kevin Smith is, but he was doing his 300th episode of his podcast here in Halifax. It was called Smudcast. And my husband said, okay, we're going to this Smodcast. What's a Smodcast? Well, it's a podcast. What's a podcast? I'm like, we're just going to an auditorium to listen to people talk. It was completely foreign to me. Fast forward a few years, I started to get it. And I thought, that was really interesting thing to do. And like I said, I just started. I started with renting some equipment. I had people over to the house. This was pre-COVID when we could get together and do these things. And I recorded my initial 10, and then it just kind of evolved from there. After the first 10 or 15 episodes, I did start going to Zoom because it was really hard to try and coordinate people coming over and recording in a matter of 2 days. So I switched to Zoom.
Yeah, and you have, I'm just gonna keep bragging about you this whole time because you also have
You're going
like
to make me blush.
well, you have really cool guests. Like I feel, so many podcasters, I think I'm not hating on these podcasters, of course, but they like try to have on, like the biggest and best names, out there. But you have like people who have really, really cool stories. And, I think that's like probably the coolest thing about your podcast. I think more people should listen to your podcast. Everybody, it's linked up down below, show notes and everywhere else. But like where do you find these people? Are they really just people you're just like super interested in? You just want to share their story? That's what I feel like it is.
It started off that way, and I started doing a lot of research looking to connect with people on Facebook. And I'd send creepy texts to people, hey, I really like what you're doing. You want to be on my podcast.
Right, right.
uh, but what really got me going was, I'm going to say it was in March of last year. I was invited to join a podcasting platform.
Mm.
It was basically, call it speed dating for connecting guests with hosts. And I started booking episodes. And then all of a sudden, I was recording 12 episodes a week.
Mm.
And that's how I got the bulk of my content. And I'm going to thank COVID for that because I had nothing else to do.
Right.
I'm here in Canada, and we were locked down for a long time. And in fact, where I am, anytime I would leave my province and
Mhm.
come home, I would have to quarantine at home for 14 days. I think we added it up. I think we did between 8 and 10 weeks quarantine.
Yeah.
So
That
I had a lot of time to work on some of these things. And that's what I did is I spent I still work full time.
right. That
So
that
I was doing my day job, turning that off, and then, connecting with the rest of the world through podcasting. And I think in a lot of ways, it's what got me through COVID.
yeah.
I love to connect with people and have those really in-depth, genuine conversations. And you can't do that sitting at home, just myself and my husband. So podcasting really, really helped me through the thick of COVID.
Yeah, I think it's like a great way to stay sane, during that time. A lot of people I think started podcasts and things during this time. I didn't prepare you for this, but is there someone or something that someone has said to you like over the years that really stands out to you on like one of your episodes? Is there anything, advice wise that you found super interesting?
Oh, that would be tough to boil it down to just one. But I think overall, I think most guests in some capacity speak to just embracing
Mm,
who you are and where you are, and having that compassion
right.
for where you are in your journey. It's so easy for us to look at other people, whether it's other people that connect with our direct circle or people that we see on social media. It's so easy to compare who we are with who they are. We're
Hmm.
comparing ourselves, but you don't have the whole story. And we're all on our own unique journeys. And that's the most beautiful thing, is when you can accept who you are, where you are in your journey, and be perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue too. You say that you turn your mess into your message. And so, would you mind
It
touching
was a big mess.
on
It's what I call hands up. I'm 49 years old. I have no problems claiming my age. Uh, I went through a really messy time back
that?
in 2017. Everything fell apart on me. What I didn't realize is it was all associated to starting that sort of midlife segment.
Mm.
I only just realized that I was midlife when I started to niche down my podcast, and I looked at all the stats and I'm like, oh, look at the age of the women following me. Oh, they're midlife. And I was like, you're midlife, Lucy.
Yeah.
That's who your audience is. Go figure. And, you know, I had one really, really bad day
Hmm.
where everything felt like it was imploding in on me. And I suddenly started to wonder if I actually wanted to be here anymore.
Hmm.
I got that close. I danced that close to the edge. It was only for a few minutes, but in that moment, I surrendered. And what I did something I'd never done before. And as I called out to the universe, and I basically said, just please give me one thing that I can do right now to pull myself out of this tailspin. And I got quiet and I started to reflect on, if I don't want to be this person, then who do I want to be? And that's not to negate anything that I already had in my life. I had the husband, the kids, the house, the cars, the vacations. I had a great life, but there was something missing, something inside of me that was missing. And I made a very short list of 5 bullet points of who that future self was going to be. And then I got up the next day and I wrote those 5 things out again. I started to incorporate in a very specific gratitude passage that I wrote myself. And I kept repeating this process every single morning. It's how I started my day. Over time, I took those 5 bullet points and I created affirmations with them, and then tied in my why. So it was much more of a power statement. And really, I attribute my complete turnaround to that practice that I started. At the time, I thought it was my darkest day. But what journaling and my journaling practice has given me is that I can now look back and see that my darkest day was actually my greatest gift.
And there's so many things I could touch on there, and don't let me forget we need to talk about your journal, of course. But I think so many people can relate to that story. So thank you for sharing. Number one, but number two, it's like even with your podcast, for example, I think you've shown that people. I try to say this a lot too, that I think people need to be comfortable and change. You seem like someone you changed the podcast, you were willing to change your life, and I think that's a really important message.
I'm a Taurus. So, we don't like change.
Right.
We like things nice and comfortable. But it was one of the things that I had to get used to. One of, one of the major things that we need to incorporate into our journey is that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable,
Hmm.
because it's once we step out of that comfort zone that growth happens. Growth does not happen when you're staying nice and comfortable, sitting on Netflix, drinking your
Right.
wine, sitting on the couch, drinking wine and watching Netflix. Growth does not happen there. And, I can prove it. I did that for way too long. But once I was willing to be okay with being uncomfortable and putting myself out there, then, the world started to open up.
Do you think it was just like have you always just known that there was like more for you? Do you think that's the thing that maybe maybe it was this difficult moment, but you felt pushed because you're like, no, there's got to be more. Was that the thing? Like, was that going off in your head?
Well, it's kind of weird because I'm one of four kids
Mm,
and it's the second oldest. And my dad always used to say to me, he goes, I don't know what, but you're going to do something big.
mm,
And it was a blessing and a curse for so long
right.
because you're carrying this burden. Oh, I'm supposed to do something really big. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing special about me because no, there's not. And I say that because anybody listening or watching, I don't want them to think that, oh yeah, she's got it all together. Because, I grew up in Ottawa, Canada, finished high school. I went to college for a few weeks, dropped out when I met some older guy in a bar. We eventually moved in, got married, had a couple of kids, and 25 years later was, where I was hitting my breaking point just because I never took the time to figure out who I was. But I was always carrying this in the back of my head. You're supposed to be doing something bigger.
Mm.
And I've done some cool things over the years, but it was never, I don't know, how do I pinpoint? It was never really connected to what I thought my purpose was.
Mm. And do you feel that I feel like you've discovered your purpose, but, do you feel like helping midlife women, moms, is kind of like your purpose? Maybe it's your purpose
Oh,
for
100%.
now. Mm,
Absolutely 100%. And, I go back to my comment earlier about when I realized the demographics of my podcast,
mm.
because I was at first, the podcast was very, very general. I was trying to share as much as I could about the tools and resources that have helped me this far. But really, I missed the boat on niching down.
Yeah, I mean, I think and also it's almost like you're creating maybe something that you would have needed, a few years ago, right? So it's like you're
Yes.
and man, I think that is one of those things where that is people's purpose. It's like creating the thing that you would have needed, when you were younger or years ago or whatever. So, I kind of feel like that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Everything goes back to that dark day.
Yeah, right.
And I remember I tapped into that emotion of who Lucie was on that darkest day.
Mm,
I can still, like, even when I bring it up, I can feel that energy inside of me, not in a negative way, but in a, that's who I'm speaking to. That's who I'm helping. If I'm helping one person, five people, it doesn't matter. It's just the, remembering who I was and what I needed. And then now, and it doesn't make a difference what episode you listen to, chances are, whether you're midlife or not, there's going to be something in there that you connect with. It's now what I'm doing is I'm just bringing a little bit more focus and connecting all of the dots of all of the projects that I'm working on.
yeah, of course. It's like, and do you think that I'm assuming, but do you think that it's easier to do the episodes because you have this like better direction? Do you think maybe things like, I think people who maybe want to start their own podcast or something, they're worried about asking questions and all this other stuff. But I think if there's like that message behind it, that maybe is easier to, have questions that pop up in your head like while you're doing it because you're doing it for a reason.
And that's it, is that, again, I prefer natural conversation.
Right.
So sure, I do a little bit of prep work before I'm getting on somebody's podcast or before somebody's coming on mine. But I ask questions because I'm curious about what they're sharing. And I'm coming at it from either where I am now or the person that I was 5 years ago. What does that person need to know? How can I share part of my journey and my story so that people can relate and go, oh, okay, I'm not the only one.
Right. Yeah. I think that's great. Good stuff. We're clipping this for sure because people need it. But let's talk about some of your projects as well. So you mentioned a journal. Can you tell us like a little bit about maybe your journaling process, the journal that you have?
So my journaling process, I start off every day, pretty much every day with the same thing. I write my 5 power statements. I have my gratitude passage. And the benefit of starting my practice that way is it, primes the pump,
Mm,
gets your ideas and it gets you from that thinking into that feeling mode. And
right.
then the words can flow a lot easier. Absolutely. There are some days that I look and I think, yeah, I'm just not feeling this today. And I just stick with those first 2 steps. But I remember I tried journaling before, and I don't know anyone listening or watching has tried journaling, and you buy these really nice journals with these beautiful paper. And I'm a girl of the 80s, so I love like glitter pens. I get all these cool glitter pens, and I'd open up my journal, and then I'd sit there staring at a blank page.
Yep.
And then you get frustrated and you'd hide it away because you don't want to be reminded of something else you failed at. And I did that 2 or 3 times. But it was after that one day that I started this specific practice that I was able to flow into journaling. And I've been able to see the measurable changes that I've had in my life with journaling. And I've looked for resources to help other people about journaling. I've spoken to different coaches that I've had on the podcast about journaling, and they all say the same thing. Well, we know we're supposed to do it, but we don't know how. And it was one friend of mine said to me, she goes, no, you need to create a journal that's guided.
Hmm.
I said, okay, you're sure you can go on the internet and find guided prompts, but there's something very specific about opening up a book and having, that's my journal.
Yep.
That's my beach that I walk pretty much every day.
I love it.
Yeah. Nothing like the beach to walk barefoot in the sand and let the waves and grounding. It's fantastic. So each day, I have different little tools just to help you get connected, a little bit of gratitude, an affirmation, and then a guided prompt.
Yeah.
It's
Just nice.
very simple.
Yeah.
It's enough to get started. The book also includes more details about my story, my journaling story, and some other tools about, setting up your mornings, evaluating where you are, what you need to work on in your life. And then the first 30 days are guided prompts. And then after the first 30 days, that's when you're probably more likely to be able to free journal yourself.
Yeah, and we'll have links to your journal down below as well. And I think, yeah, it's one of those things I've been, scripting, journaling, whatever you want to call it, for a while. And again, it's one of those things that I think is probably one of the things that changed my life the most, and in maybe the shortest amount of time too. I don't, it's kind of hard to judge, but I think that having the guided prompts, and especially simple, like something simple, is a great idea.
And I set them up in such a way so that, it's dipping your toe in.
Yep.
We're not asking any really deep questions right at the beginning. You have to get comfortable with it. And over time, you can become curious.
Mm-hmm.
You can move more into the witness of what you're doing in your life rather than being like in the thick of it.
Right.
There's, there's a long, long list that, I could share with the benefits of journaling. I just invite anybody listening, whether you pick up my journal or you just grab a blank piece of paper, you
Mm-hmm.
know, just start. What I bluntly call it sometimes is you're just vomiting on a page.
Right.
Just get it all out
Out.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the best way to do it, because you're kind of getting. It's almost like you're training your mind to get rid of that inner critic. That
Yeah.
especially when you're doing it like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The inner critic. That's what I call the itty bitty shitty committee.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you get used to turning down the volume on that,
Mm,
then you can start to realize, one, when it's starting to pipe up, and two, that you no longer need it.
right.
You can move to that point where that voice has protected you this far
Hmm.
for good, bad, or ugly. It's been there, but now you can move forward and start trusting your own inner voice and your intuition.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best part about it. Yeah, about journaling. The other thing that you're doing is you're building a community, and I talk about community all the time. I think it's probably one of the best things you could be doing right now. And so, can you tell us like a little bit about your community?
Yeah, it's built, like I said, It's not on Facebook. That's the most common place I think people are building communities. The other place is, oh, what's the one that gamers use?
Oh, Discord.
Discord.
Yep.
I've been part of a couple of groups on Discord, and
Hmm.
again, it wasn't private. There were other things that were constantly pulling your attention away from where you were. I stumbled upon this really neat platform. It was created by a woman. It's
Hmm.
called Mighty Networks.
Oh yeah.
Love it. And it is so easy to create your own online community. The overall setup looks very similar to, a Facebook page.
Hmm.
You can have different discussions, you can have conversations. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to having in our group is what I call fireside chats.
Mm.
Because one thing that us as women have moved away from is those conversations, whether you want to go back to, tribal women sitting around a fire, that sense of community, sharing where we're at, what we've been through. Women are crying out for this type of thing.
Mm.
And that's what I'm building. It's called Nectar Growth. And we're going to have different journaling themes in there. We're going to have the fireside chats. We're going to have extended interviews from podcast guests. So, and that's also where I'm going to be my journaling process.
Mm.
That's the next thing on the list when I get everything else up and going, is I'm going to be creating an online course to show other people how to actually create their own power statements and really bring their journaling practice to a different level.
Yeah, I think I love the idea because I think it's something I've thought about a lot. And thanks for Mighty Networks. I've been thinking about using it actually, but I think that we can just learn so much better in that kind of group setting. And is that what it's going to be? Basically, like a place for people to learn and kind of grow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Again, it's going to midlife moms
Right.
and sharing the whole range of topics that comes up. Here in Canada, our medical system is being squeezed more and more. We don't have we have free healthcare, but it's not very good. It's not. And women really have to advocate for their own services,
Mm.
to have basic care from their doctors when it comes to their midlife years. So it's sharing those resources, what worked for one, what worked for another. A lot of women are also caught in that, what they call the sandwich generation. We're seeing our kids off to college, while on the other hand, we're taking care of aging parents. We're being pulled in all sorts of different directions. And women, we just need to have that place where we can connect, share our hopes and dreams. Where are we talking about our dreams out there with all of this social media and all of these platforms that we have? Where are we talking about our dreams, what we want, our hopes, and then how to go about doing them? And the best thing that women are going to like about this is, yeah, you know what? We're going to do some venting.
Love it.
and the men, you know what? You're going to love it because we're not going to be venting to you.
Right. That's right. That's a very good point. It sounds, yeah, I just love the idea because it sounds more, it's like a resource. It's like a super resource that you're creating. And, I think that, not to talk too much about this, but, just thinking about the future in astrology, I think that people who build, amazing resources, there's just like so much value in that. I think it's going to be super valuable. So love it. And I also want to talk to you about, you mentioned something about a podcast summit and, could you tell us a little bit about that?
So that's the next. I was sort of talking about seasons for the podcast.
Oh, right.
So the next thing I want to do is, and it's funny because in one of your readings I listened to this week, I think it was a September one, you had mentioned something about just because there's ways that other people have done things doesn't mean that you have to do it. And, if you're going to make a new way of doing it, then, just go try that. And I chuckled. I'm like, yeah, Chris, that's exactly what I'm going to try. We'll see how it works. Because I have an established podcast, I like the idea of an online summit.
Mm.
And I'm going to mash them together. I'm going to call it, I don't know, Pod Summit.
Love it.
And it's going to start off with, I'm hoping to get 5 women that are coaches or doctors, have one group podcast where we're sharing our midlife stories. And then I'm going to do a solo episode with each of the members from the first episode. And we're going to have some different giveaways. We're going to have some freebies. And eventually what I'd like to do is transcribe all of those podcasts and create a short ebook, midlife handbook.
I love that idea, and I'm sure that many will be listening. So, is it all right if people contact you about that if they want to be that?
Oh, absolutely. If it's something that you want to be part of, if you want more information, absolutely reach out. I love collaborating, and I love, I may have an initial idea, but if we can expand on it, let's chat.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put your contact information down below as well. So if anybody, it just hit me when you said that. I was like, oh, I bet there are plenty of people that actually might fit exactly what you just said that would love to take part in that. So we can definitely do that for you. Um, and it's also that's gonna be interesting. It's like your this idea of idea sex. One of my favorite people, James Altucher, talks about this, and that's exactly what you're doing. You're like mixing two things together. So I think it's gonna do very well for you.
I hope so. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's a fun take on things. And hey, if it works, great. If it's only meh, okay, well, I've learned something.
The other thing that I find interesting about you too, just a random side note, is that I like that you think like, oh, how can I turn this into something else? You're taking it, you're saying, how can I turn this into an ebook? How can I turn this into something else? And I talk about that all the time. I think more and more people, need to think about how they can turn the stuff that they're doing into like more work.
And that's it. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. I do have a bit of a background in marketing.
Mhm.
I'm very fortunate to be married to a creative director in advertising. So he takes
Yeah,
care, he makes sure I look good.
right.
So that's always handy. But that's the thing, is it, so often we see different posts on, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, about the latest and the greatest way to do something that's already been done. How to get your first 1,000 subscribers on TikTok in the next 5 minutes.
Mm.
There's all this information out there. And sometimes you just have to take that chance and, not look at what everyone else is doing and try something completely different.
Yeah, and I think that's the only way you're going to stand out nowadays too is, by being different, and for you, I think you're being something that doesn't even exist right now, which they say there's the whole saying of
I think
being
my parents said that to me once.
there you go. Sorry to bring that up.
Oh, no, it's all good.
But you're like a true innovator. It's you kind of like the whole arrows in the back thing. They say that the innovators get the most arrows in their back or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's more fun to come up with all these ideas and try all this stuff that you're trying.
It is. It's a lot of fun. I have a busy brain.
Mm,
Sometimes it doesn't want to quieten down at 2 a.m. I start thinking about things,
right.
but it keeps everything interesting. That's for sure.
What do you do? What do you do to quiet that voice? I have the same problem. I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm thinking about something that I want to do. What do you have any tips or tricks, or are you just like me and you just stay up all morning?
Well, I found a CBD company,
Oh yeah.
and I have a small roll on
Yep.
that's a CDB nighttime
Roll thing.
rolly thing.
Yep.
That can help. That can help. Um, but it's also, sometimes you just have to accept it though.
Right.
Like, if that's who I am,
Hmm.
and sometimes I come up with a really cool idea 2 a.m. The key is I just have to remember it when I wake up 3 hours later.
Right. You gotta take the notes on your. I always have my phone, which you're not supposed to sleep with your phone, but I sleep with my phone because I gotta open up my notes and write down the notes because I will forget in the morning.
Yeah, and if that's where I am right now, again, that goes back to just being okay with who you are. Yeah, I'm fortunate in the sense that I do work from home, so my schedule is flexible. So my alarm's not going off at 6, and I'm not having to drive for 45 minutes, on 5 hours sleep.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely a
That-
plus.
yeah.
But sometimes you just have to go with those ebbs and flows of why your body, your mind is doing what it's doing. Is, you know, sometimes somebody in the universe might be trying to download a message to you, and you just have to be open to hearing it.
That is a very, very good point. I think we're gonna end it on that note too. Do you have anything that you would like to share here at the end before we let you go?
My biggest, my biggest message that I want to share with anyone listening is like I said earlier, there was nothing special about me. The only difference is that I was willing to take a chance and to be okay with being different. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have too many people that are trying to be exactly like somebody else. There's only one you, so go ahead and be you.
I love it. And where can people find you as well?
The best place to connect with me is on Instagram. It's got a whole bunch of underscores under each word. It's the Roller Coaster Podcast. Look for me. Never hesitate to send me a message, send me an email. I love connecting. I love chatting.
Awesome. And we will have all those links down below, so they'll be easy to find, right? So thank you
Perfect.
again, Lucie. Really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Bye.